introduce Alexis, ESPN reporter and my very good friend. Alexis, introduce yourself.
First of all, hey guys, so nice to virtually kind of meet you. As Andrew said, my name is Alexis Nunes. I am first and foremost Andrew's friend. We go way back. We went to Campion together. Big up all Campionites. Exactly. And yeah, as he said, I am a sports reporter, presenter, journalist. I have been for what feels like a long time now. I started out at Sports Max back home in Jamaica. I was there for 4 years and I hosted the show called the Sports Max Zone. Then it was with like Wavell Hines, Lance Whitaker, as well as Simon Crosskill, which I'm sure everybody knows. And after that, I got an invitation to audition at ESPN. I went out and I did that audition and I got the job, and I've been at ESPN ever since. And this exact month marks 10 years at ESPN. I can't believe it, a whole decade. And so, yeah, so when I got the job at ESPN, that was like 2014. I moved from Kingston to Bristol, Connecticut in the US, which is where the ESPN headquarters are. And then I was there for about 4.5 years. And then because I mainly cover cricket and football, so I mainly cover like Premier League, La Liga, Bundesliga, Serie A, all of that stuff, as well as the international tournaments. They decided to move me to London because we have a smaller office in London, but it's just England's the kind of epicenter. I mean, England gave the world the two sports, cricket and football. So yeah, I moved here. For those who don't know, Disney owns ESPN. So it's a Disney office that's here in London, which is why I say it's a smaller one. But my main role is a field reporter. I mainly go to the games, hence Goalside reporters. And as opposed to being in studio, which is a nice and comfy setting, but I love it, you know, while I'm still young, single, and I like to be in the mix of things, in the mix of all the bad weather and everything. But yeah, that's a little bit of me.
Oh, awesome. I didn't realize it was 10 years. That's a long time, Alexis.
I know, I have. Oh no, maybe I'll whip it out later because Disney just sent us a plaque that when you complete 10 years at Disney, they say, thank you for 10 magical years with Mickey Mouse on it. He's my boss.
So I'm curious, did you always want to be a sports journalist, but as opposed to anything else in sports, or did it just happen?
Well, Andrew, you would know this for sure because
I know sports, but I know football especially, and I know Gunners.
Oh gosh, yes.
Man United, sorry. Wow.
Wow. Wow, shame on you. Yes, for anybody that is watching, I am a embattled Manchester United supporter, but somebody still has to be these days. But we can always talk about that later. But yes, to answer your question, I don't want to say always, but from we met back at Campion, I did know that's exactly what I wanted to do. I knew at one point I wanted to be a cinematographer. I think I always liked working in film and that kind of stuff. So media on a whole, because obviously media has so many different aspects to it. And I definitely wanted to do that. I used to enjoy making my own little films. I used to use Windows Movie Maker back in the day. I don't think anybody knows what that is anymore. And I used to make my own slideshows of Manchester United pictures or videos. I used to use like Adobe Paint Pro to make my own little wallpapers that everyone would put on their computers back in the day. I love tennis as well. Andrew would know that. I used to love, obviously, Rafael Nadal, Andy Roddick. I used to make wallpapers of them. So I always knew I wanted to be in it in some way. And then I chose to study media and communications at the University of the West Indies, big up UWI, at Carrimack. And the first year of it, how it's set out, is that you just do media on a whole. So you learn about the laws, you learn about the ethics of it, you learn about the whole landscape of media and communications. And then the second year, if you do well enough in the first year, you get to choose. So people who want to do print, radio, telemarketing, broadcast, TV. So I chose TV because, yeah, I felt like that was best suited to me. And I kind of always loved, even though I'm on camera now, I always also was very interested in the behind the scenes production. I really liked producing and having more of a creative, I suppose, like I like getting in the creative aspect behind the scenes as well. So, but it just so happened I ended up in front of the camera as well. And yeah, so that's...
And just for context, like when you were doing all of this like stuff on Windows Media Player, because we met what in second form, right?
Yeah.
And back then, that's when you realized that this is what you kind of had a passion for and wanted to do.
Yeah, I knew. I mean, my father was the one who got me into sports. Like he used to take me down to Sabina Park all the time to watch KCC, Kingston Cricket Club, and everybody knows Sabina Park hot. And to try and make anybody like cricket, especially test cricket, when you're young, oh my days, it was hard. But after a while, I just used to think, well, you know what? If you can't beat them, join them. And after a while, you just start asking questions. And I would say, all right, Daddy, how do I know it's a wicket? How do I know it's LBW? How do I know he's out? And the same thing for football. You know, I used to go to all the Reggae Boys games as well. And I just kind of fell in love with it. So I knew I wanted to work in it in some capacity, because Lord knows I was not blessed with any athletic prowess. So I was not about to become an international athlete, that's for sure. I'm probably the slowest Jamaican ever. It's embarrassing. My best sport was actually swimming, you know, but we'll get there one day.
Me too.
Exactly, we'll get there one day. But I don't think I had that competitive nature to stick to becoming a professional athlete. So I knew I still wanted to work in it. And like I said, there's just so many different aspects in terms of media communication and journalism that you could, you know, work in. And I just knew that that's something I wanted to do. And if I got my foot in to do it, it would always be around sports.
Well, I mean, okay, let's touch on that now, because as you just said, journalism, you know, like how do you define journalism? What is it to you? Give us a little bit more about the profession and just defining what it is that you do.
Well, sports journalism, I guess on a whole, it just sounds easily defined, which is just the coverage of sports, you know, and, you know, that could be anything from a simple match report or a match preview, as well as, you know, a more in-depth analysis as to what went on, or a certain angle of the game, or of the man of the match or the woman of the match type of thing. And it ranges. But for me, like, in the easiest way to put it, I would say that sports journalism and journalism on a whole is storytelling. You are telling a story. And for me, I always view it as a way to bridge the gap between either the diehard fan or the casual viewer and the sports world. It's your job to draw them in, to tell them that this is about, and it's your job to tell the sports story, the athlete story, the manager's story, the community story that is around the sport. So for me, in simple terms, it really is storytelling, just on a different level, because of course it's not fictional storytelling. But in the end, you're telling someone a story, and you're hoping to bridge that gap between, you know, two different worlds.
I guess someone in the industry too, you probably you can look at different styles. You see different journalists, you see how they do things differently. Do you have a favorite journalist, or someone that you think does like one of the best jobs?
Actually, I think don't laugh at me, but honestly, one of the best for me would be Simon Crossgill, hands down, no questions asked. Wow. Like, I just love how Simon always was unapologetically himself. You know, and I feel like, obviously, growing up in Jamaica, we were in such an interesting position historically because of the influence of, you know, England and Britain, because of colonialization and all of that. And then there's our proximity to the US, which is a very different style of media to the UK. Now that I live here, I see the two different kind of styles that, you know, go on in media. And I feel like in Jamaica, we tended to think of more like very BBC button up, nice. And Simon just came and was like, to hell with that. Yeah. He was, I mean, when you think Simon, everybody goes, oh Lord, Simon Crossgill, like cantankerous man. But for me, I absolutely loved it, because being a part of ESPN and the fact that we consume the American style of media so much, it is very personality driven. And I love that, because when you are putting your work out there, you are looking for a connection with people on the other side of the screen or the radio, or them reading your article, and you have to draw them in some way, somehow. And I feel like your personality is the best thing to put out there as well as your storytelling. But you have to kind of marry both. And Simon was great in that. We already knew that he knew the game. He had a great understanding of the game, because he, you know, worked as a commentator as well. But his personality and the fact that he was able to inject it and was unapologetic for it. I love that. And I know that we seem like complete opposites, but watching him and then getting to work with him, I think I think molded just how I am and who I am today.
I'm so happy you said Simon, because I was just thinking, our participants are all in Jamaica, and maybe one day we will expand to the Caribbean, but the Caribbean has a special relationship with sports, especially the West Indies. We have the West Indies cricket team, So I wanted to find out from you as well, as a Caribbean or as Jamaicans, do we have a little bit of, what do you consider to be our edge in the industry? Something that probably not so, like our reporter from the UK or from the US may not be able to see from our perspective. What's our unique perspective in your opinion?
Well, it's so funny that you say that and that you mentioned the West Indies, because now that I've lived, abroad, and then I've covered cricket in a number of different, competitions, whether it's IPL over in India, I've done Big Bash in Australia, I've done, Cricket World Cups, Women World T20, Men's World T20 as well. And everywhere I go, all of the other teams, like, we know a couple of things. We know India and Pakistan hate each other. We know England, Australia hate each other. And everybody just wants to beat England because but everybody's second favorite team, if it's not their country, it's West Indies. Everyone always wants the West Indies to do well, because you think of the Caribbean and you think of a bright, colorful, melting pot of cultures. And everybody loves that. They crave that. They love the diversity of it. And that diversity, I think, translates into personality and how we do media, which is why I remember when I started out at Sportsmax, because of how I would see at that time, news was being done on TVJ and CVM, or how the news was being read on the radio. I thought, I had to be very straight, very BBC News at 7. You put on your news anchor voice kind of thing. You don't inject your personality too much.
Right.
And it was until I met Simon and we did the show, and he always used to be like, because we would talk off camera, and he would say, you see what you just said right now about Arsenal when we have the Premier League segment, say that. And I was like, what? No. He's like, no, that's what the people want to see. They want to relate to that. And I think for the world, the Caribbean is such a loved region. It's such a colorful region. People think of us and they think, color, they think vacation, they think happy times, and I think that is our strength, our culture, our personalities, the fact that people can't pinpoint us down to one certain style, because everyone thinks England has a certain style, everyone thinks America has a certain style, everyone thinks, South Africa, Australia has a certain style or a specific accent, but we, at least in the West Indies, it's completely different. But much like the West Indies cricket team, we're all sorts of one. And I think that to me is our biggest strength, I think.
Sorry, not to cut you off, but correct me if wrong. We have a good tradition of like exporting very talented journalists, sports journalists in particular, right? I mean, I can't think of, I don't know why they would want to, but like anyone from the UK or the US or wherever coming here and really doing well. But I can't name names, but you probably can identify some journalists that are from the region that have gone on to do big things.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the one I just mentioned right there, Simon. I mean,
yeah,
he has actually worked with the BBC.
Simon had a brother as well that was very big. He was at the BBC.
Exactly. Both of them worked at BBC, and like I said, I think to this day in the world, I mean, not just for sports journalism in terms of BBC Sport, but just BBC on a whole is still such a highly respected news outlet as well. For me, I still, to this day, even living in England, there's a couple of other outlets too. You have now TNT, you have Sky Sports as well. But I always, if I'm going to try fact check something, I make sure I check on BBC first. And if it's not up there yet, that's the whole file. We'll wait for BBC to confirm. And, Simon rose to that level and was working for them as well as, his brother. So that's what I was saying. We have such a wonderful, because of our culture and because of our history, we have such a great adaptability, I think. Look how many people, the diaspora of Caribbean people living in the US and living in England as well. Sometimes I go all the way up to Manchester, which is so freezing cold, and you will overturn a rock and find a Jamaican shivering there. But still, we make it there. And I think that's one of the best things too. I think, we're very, at least especially for Jamaicans, we're very strong-willed. We're very headstrong. men and women. I think that's just embedded in our culture, for better or for worse. But, especially in an industry like sports journalism, or especially for what I do, where you're in front of the camera, you do have to have tough skin, and you do have to have that self-belief that I feel like I laugh at, but I feel like every Jamaican is just born with a little bit of that little, what, we little but with Talawa, and I'm going to do it type of personality.
Wow, thank you. I just want to, again, there are a few people who joined us. I think Anika, Sia, and Hannah. Just welcome you guys, Abigail. Thanks again for joining. We are about 10 minutes or 15 minutes into our discussion. And again, we're recording, so you'll be able to rewatch later on. And also there's a chat where you can drop any questions. Feel free to write them in. We'll address them either throughout or right after during the Q&A session. And I think we have about 40 more minutes left in the chat with Alexis. My next question, or what I'm thinking, we kind of touching on everything, of course, but there's, journalism and society, the power of storytelling and sports. What's the role of what you see sports journalism in society, the role and the ability to affect social change or anything like that? What is the responsibility that someone like you takes on?
Well, I mean, we know that media sort of makes the world go round, really and truly. It's how we stay connected. It's the oldest form of staying connected and finding out what's going on. And in sports, it's no different, really and truly. And what we see more and more now, especially with the rise of social media, is it has given all aspects, or all, I would say, persons who are related to sports, and I mean, whether it's the athletes, whether it's the manager of the team, whether it's the president of the team, whether it's the owner of the team, or whether it's just a person like myself that's reporting on a specific team, it has given us a platform that is able to have an impact and create social changes. We've seen it, for example, with the Black Lives Matter movement, with Colin Kaepernick in the USA, with NFL and him taking the knee. And since then, that's now become one of the the biggest symbols of resistance as well. Like, since probably Black Panther days, which, not the Disney Marvel movie, Andrew will know, like our parents witnessed, and now that's kind of like the fast forward this century's sort of embodiment of that. And you see it so many times as well. You see how many as well athletes have to speak out on certain issues. And on one hand, with the rise of social media, it's sometimes me as a journalist, sometimes you can get bitter and feel like it takes the work away from you, because before you were the voice for the athletes. You go, and this is why we do interviews. This is why you work hard, you network, you get athletes, agents, media managers, club presidents to trust you so that they will sit down with you and give you a talk exclusively. But now athletes will go straight on their social media and just say what they need to say, speak out on what, they've experienced, whether, for example, it's been, the amount of players that have experienced racial abuse in the Premier League or La Liga. You see right now with Vinicius Jr. at Real Madrid, he does that. And because he has spoken out about that on his Instagram time and time again, they have used that. And now La Liga has banned how many fans for life from stadiums who have been found to racially abuse some of the players from the clubs. They have used that based on what the players have spoken out about before. Without that visibility, without them speaking out, without them knowing that they can use this for social change, imagine all of the cases that got swept under the rug back in the day. But now, that's sports journalism does that. It gives you that as well, that power, I would say, because even for us as journalists, we obviously get to sit in certain areas throughout the stadium, whether you have the press box, and you're allowed to record certain things now on your phone. And I know a couple of my colleagues who have been at football games and have recorded, certain chants that are either anti-Semitic, their homosexual chants, their racist chants as well. And they've submitted that in their articles, or they've submitted that in their reports. And because of that, the police or the authorities have gotten involved, clubs have gotten involved, and they've been able to, punish those appropriately. And that's just another role of a sports journalist as well. You're, like I said, you're telling that story, but now it's gone one step further because you're seeing change being brought about because of your own story.
Wow. I didn't think about all of that. And it kind of leads into the next topic. You know, I wanted to look at the different types of journalism. So, of course, you are on TV. I know you have a social media account, but most people know you from TV on ESPN. But there's also print and digital writing, and I'd love for everyone here today. I would love to hear from everyone in the chat. So if you could drop, you know, we know our programming is focusing a lot on social media, but if you are interested in a particular type of journalism, so there's social media reporting, I have multimedia journalism, broadcast journalism, print and digital media. Those are just some of what I have. But you tell me a little bit more about like the different aspects and what you think. I know what how come you fell into where you are, and what you think the skill sets are for probably some of them, and maybe somebody who's trying to figure out what's best for them. What kind of advice you give?
Well, yeah, like I said, there's so many different aspects and different jobs within sports journalism on a whole. Like I was just giving the example at Carimac, you know, you learn the basics the first year, which I thought is good because that's the basic skills that you expect from any journalist, you know, whether it's in sports or whether it's just regular journalism, in terms of hard-hitting news, that kind of thing. But you expect to be able, you're trying to become a good storyteller. Because either if you're trying to be on TV, if you're trying to say on radio, if you're trying to be on print, or even if you're just trying to put your work on social media, you are telling a story at the end of the day, and you have to tell it in a certain way that's going to draw people in and keep them, but you're still reporting and telling facts, you know, or you're giving thought-provoking opinions as well. And for me, if we're breaking it down simple, I mean, if you're going to go into print, then you definitely have to love writing. And I know people will say print is dying and whatnot. It's not necessarily dying. Print, maybe as we once knew it in terms of just newspapers and stuff. Maybe it's all digital now, which that's fine. Save some trees. But, you know, you still have to write. What you're writing for a newspaper is exactly what you're writing for an online paper as well, or an online magazine. And you have to have, there's different skills there too, because you have to know what kind of writing you want. If you're going to do hard-hitting news where you're just stating the facts, and I mean it within your first sentence, it has to be the whole purpose of this piece. Like you always hear, do not bury the lead, go straight. It's almost like you're telling somebody a juicy story, a little bit of gossip. You go straight to them, and I go, Andrew, you will never believe I saw so and so kissing our next man. Boom. And then you go, and that's what you start with, and then you give the details. And that's what you have to do. And then you get into feature writing as well. I personally loved feature writing because it gives you, then you take an angle from it. So for example, in football, which is what I cover, as I said, you could have a game that finishes Real Madrid 3, Barcelona 2, end of game. The match facts and the match report will just tell the facts. And then in that game, you could say that Vinicius Jr. got racially abused. As a feature writer, you're going to expand on that. And what you usually do there is you try to get more voices to contribute to it, because this is more of a longer form piece. It's a feature, if you will. And I think those are the two main types of print journalism there. Radio is very similar to television because it falls under broadcast. And the number one, this is my wheelhouse. And the number one rule I learned there is the opposite of print, because you have to be short, you have to be concise, you have to get to the point quickly, and you have to talk to people like you're sitting down in front of them. You cannot, I think when you're writing in print, you're thinking in a very formal manner, and you're writing your words properly, grammatically correct. And that's how it should be. With radio and with television, you have maybe 60 seconds of someone's attention. And this day is less, let's be honest. About 20 seconds before someone's deciding they're going to change the channel or change the station back to music. So you have to get to the point quickly, and you have to tell it like you're just talking to someone, like you're talking to me now, Andrew. I will not talk to you in a very formal way if I'm telling a story. Just say, do you know what, Andrew? I went down the road today and I saw a dog bite a man. Just like that. You're not going to try and skirt around and paint it. So a lot of people, I think, that get into television and radio get nervous because they say, oh, I don't really speak very formally though. That's perfect.
Yeah.
Of course, you have to have a good command and know what you're saying and still speak the language that you're going to be reporting or broadcasting in. But it is more casual. It's more conversational. Like talk like you're speaking to somebody.
Yeah.
You know, but no long-winded sentences, just something short, straight to the point. And that's one of the reasons why I do love broadcast journalism. Very to the point, and very much just getting into the meat of the matter, and a casual way, I think, because once you become too formal, I feel like you lose people.
I guess that's where, I mean, in a tradition, or the bar, the standard has been set by news at 7 on CVM, or like on TVJ, or back then JBC, or Super Supreme TV. But anyways, I mean, they were excellent. They were professionals, but, you know, it is a very formal setting. They're reading off a teleprompter. And you touched on a lot of the skills that you think are important. If you're going to be on radio, you have to be sharp, quick to the point, attention grabbing. You said if you want to be a writer, you know, the skills that you need for something like that. Tell us about the skill of remain unbiased. So if you obviously, everybody who is into sports have their favorite teams or athletes. How easy it is for you to remain unbiased when doing a story, and how important is it?
First of all, it's the most important thing. Like, you have to be objective in anything, in any sort of journalism. Now, there are shows that will allow you to express your opinion. For example, if you're looking to read on the 7 o'clock news, that is where you're just delivering the story, you're delivering the facts. You can still inject a little bit of personality, of course, which is what I always say I personally feel has been needed in not just Jamaican television, but Caribbean television as well. Especially the fact that we have such big, wonderful personalities and a great culture. But you are just telling the facts. If you want to go into more of an opinionated show, then of course you can change. But that doesn't mean you fabricate stories. That doesn't mean that you have a biased opinion. For example, the show that I do, which is ESPN FC, everybody who's on the show, it's an opinionated show. Anybody that watches ESPN knows that ESPN is heavily personality driven. If you watch mainly some of the American sports, you know that we have shows like First Take, which have Stephen A. Smith. And Stephen A. Smith has made his career on expressing his opinions in a massively bold way.
Yeah.
And I think, but he's usually right. He usually has his facts there. And for example, as we were saying, I'm a Manchester United fan. Everybody knows that on ESPN FC. However, that doesn't mean that I am going to see Man United as they are now, losing and getting absolutely slaughtered by Tottenham Hotspur the other day, and then going on the post show and saying, well, at the end of the day, Man United are still better though. I wouldn't do that. That's me injecting my biased opinion because I think they're better on a whole, but that's not exactly what happened. The truth is they got absolutely slaughtered. So that's the thing. You're able to still argue and give your opinions, because then I could go and say, well, historically Manchester United are better, so then does that mean that Spurs now are officially better? And then you can start that conversation. But you also have to be careful as well with those things, because you're still able to give your opinion, but then it can affect you in the work you do. Like I say, because if when I was working and Jurgen Klopp is watching ESPN by chance, and if he sees that, oh, this girl is a heavy Man United fan and only talking about Man United, next Liverpool match I do, he may not want to give me an interview because he will think I'll be biased to Manchester United. So you do have to show personality. And I think in this day and age, the media landscape has changed in terms of we encourage more personality to be shown. We encourage you to show your opinion, and especially in sports, because respectfully and wonderfully, the beautiful thing about sports is that it's a bit of an escape for all of us. It's an escape for the news. I used to watch the little news reports on TVJ News or CVM News because all of the regular news was just so heavy. And I used to ask mommy and daddy to call me when the sports was on. And I would just come in for those 5-10 minutes and it was bliss for me. And then I would just leave. And for so many people, sports is an escape. You know, it's the one time we can turn off and not have to worry about war going on here and genocide going on there. And I think that, you know, it's still, even though sports still does have some heavy aspects to it, and, you know, ugly heads can be reared in it, It is such an escape for so many people. So we are very lucky where you're able to show more personality than you can probably if you were doing regular hard hitting news. So I think that's the best thing I think I love personally about sports journalism.
All right. So okay, on to a couple more things that challenges now. Like let's get into what you have to be skilled in certain areas, but then when you're doing the job, what are the things that are constantly running through your mind in terms of challenges that you have to get over or that you see coming when you're supposed to be covering an event or interviewing an athlete? Talk to us a little bit about that.
I think, well, honestly, the biggest challenge I've ever faced just in the career is just the fact that I'm a woman. And I constantly have to prove myself, and I constantly have to prove people that, yes, I know what a wicket is. Yes, I know what offside is. No, I'm not just in it because I think Cristiano Ronaldo is hot. You constantly do. A woman, it still is that you have to work the double as a man. I've had colleagues, I see Azari has mentioned Stevie Nicol in the chat. If Stevie mispronounces somebody's name on ESPN FC, and trust me, he does, oftentimes brush it off. They don't say anything, you know? But if I mispronounce somebody's name, they're going to be like, see, I knew that gal never know what she was talking about. And that's just what it is. But for me, I would say I took that more as an invitation to prove to you that I know exactly what I'm doing and that I deserve to be there. Because I knew I did. I knew I was not just there for all these superficial reasons that people thought we were there. So that's the one challenge I think everybody is going through. I would say the number one challenge for sports journalists across the board is access to your teams, players, athletes, clubs. Because we're talking about big time celebrities. We're talking about big time athletes whose time is precious. It really is. And a lot of them do this, or they're out there playing football or cricket or basketball because they love the game and they don't necessarily want the celebrity that comes with it. Just because they are put out on this platform doesn't automatically mean that they're this perfect public speaker now. You know, I've met so many players who are the complete opposite of that. I'll give an example. A good friend of mine is Raheem Sterling, who now plays for Arsenal, but formerly played for Chelsea as well as Manchester City. You know, born in Jamaica, raised there, but moved to England, played for England as well. And Raheem is such a wonderful personality. However, he just does not like public speaking. Something about when you put the camera on him and the lights on him, he's a man of few words, you know, and it doesn't mean that he's a bad person. It doesn't mean that, you know, he probably shouldn't be an athlete. Of course not. But that's what I was saying. You encounter so many of them that want to protect their peace. And that is how they have to weed out the good journalists from, I don't want to say the bad journalists, but the tabloid journalists, I would say. Because there are two very different things. The amount of times when I request interviews and I have to remind the agents or the athletes, look, we're only going to talk about this. I really don't care where you were last night, because on ESPN, that's not what we're focusing on. But other tabloids, if this were TMZ, I'm sure they would care what they were doing last night and if they were eating at McDonald's when they have a game on Saturday. That's the kind of thing. And this is what athletes and agents have to navigate with. We know that the public eye is on them with triple magnifying glasses. So it makes them become even more withdrawn and more reserved. So that's what I say. Once you go out and do your work in a very unbiased way and you stick to the facts and you ultra fact check, because in the sports world, everybody races to be the first. They want to be the first to break news. And that is such a dangerous drug to take, I would say. You don't want to be the first. You want to be the one that is correct. It doesn't matter if you come fifth. If the four before you are not fact checking and you are, that is, you have done your job. Because then the athletes will look at it and be like, well, you know, I remembered you and I kind of liked that. And then they will probably be granting you the exclusive when they're about to leave their club and go to a rival club. And that's your job. If you just do your job well, it will speak for itself. And I think that is why access to players, to clubs, to presidents of clubs, to owners of clubs is the hardest challenge I think that we face as journalists on a whole, because look, their time is precious, as I said, and they have a million reasons why they shouldn't trust you. So it's your job to give them the one reason why they should. And the best way to do that is through your work.
It's fantastic advice. Thank you. And I also wanted to find out from you, what do you think? This isn't me being cheeky, but like, what is the easiest way for a journalist to lose their credibility in the industry right now, in your opinion?
Literally, what I just said about just trying to be the first. In the world of social media now, I can tell you that anytime news breaks, whether it's in sports or not, you just pull up Twitter or X or whatever it wants to be these days. You pull it up and you'll see a number of random people tweeting about it. Respectfully, Andrew, you probably will tweet a breaking news and be like, oh my days, I've just seen that so-and-so is leaving the Clippers to go to the Miami Heat. Crazy move. And then someone will see that and be like, oh my days, take it as gospel. Can you believe it? Without checking if Andrew is an actual journalist. Does he have any credibility to his name?
Rubbish guy.
Exactly. But that's the thing, which is why I say people always want to be the first. And I think in social media, it has allowed a lot of people who aren't journalists to basically be the first in this race, because everybody has their phone right now and can go up and tweet something, and they hear this rumor and they tweet it and people take it as gospel without looking if this person has any credibility or not. And that's what I say, you have to fact check as a journalist. And I think for example, anybody who's watching now and watches football as well, they will know of Fabrizio Romano. He's always like one of the first to break transfer news, especially in the transfer windows, whether it's the summer or January transfer window. And he became famous because he was always the first. He was always the first. And fair play to Fabrizio. I've met him many times, and he does fact check, and he has his links everywhere. And that's how he does get it right. And he thrives off of being the first. And like I said, though, this man, though, has put in his work to get his links who are credible links to do it. So if you can do that, that's exactly what you should be doing behind the scenes. Journalists rarely sleep because, once the camera turns off, that doesn't mean our job is done there. But like I was saying, when you're starting out, just be right. Focus on being correct, focus on being unbiased, and then think about becoming first later on, because eventually you will get there. Eventually, when you put out enough work that is unbiased, that is correct, that is done in such an ethical way, footballers or cricketers or presidents of clubs or CEOs of clubs or agents will call you first and give you that information, as opposed to you having to rely on hearing it from this person or that person and then tweeting. So that, to me, I think would be the best way to stay ethical.
Okay. Well, we're coming up to our Q&A section, and I just want to again encourage everyone who's here, if you have any questions, we really want to hear what you guys think, or if you just want to make a statement, you can do it in the chat in the call, and then I will just ask Alexis to tell us a little bit more in terms of what the future of sports journalism is looking like. And I know we've touched on like social media and the impact it has had on someone like you trying to really develop a niche with either athletes, because now they have access to just telling everybody everything that comes to their mind whenever it comes to their mind. But where do you see the future of the industry going, and how social media can be utilized or taken advantage of right now?
Well, honestly, social media is the future already. I think we see that. I don't think anything can compete with how quickly you can get news out there, and then how quickly you can get responses from all over the world, 24 hours a day, different regions. So things are going digitally. Like I said, newspapers. I mean, I still love newspapers. When I do La Liga games over in Spain, the first thing I do is when I land and I have a game to do, I buy all of the newspapers, the more popular newspapers there, the trusted ones. So like AS, Marca, Mundo Deportivo, which are like, the gleaners, the observers there. And I just read what they're saying there, because there's something that you can't beat when you have a proper good newspaper in your hand. But you find newspapers as well online. You can find those same articles online, and everything is going to go digital. And the number one thing I say will change, and has already changed, is not to dumb down what I did, because I just noticed that Azari has asked about what my educational route was like. And this is perfect, because this is exact point I wanted to point out when you said, how does the future look? And I think a lot of people get scared when it comes to sports journalism now and think that they have to go and, get a bachelor's and then a master's and a PhD and then start. I personally only have my bachelor's from UE in it. And when I tell you that I just came from doing the preseason tour in the US for like Man United, Arsenal, etc., when they go over before the season starts and play all these exhibition games. And I was in press boxes with YouTubers, with bloggers, with people that never even went to university, but they have built a persona online and on social media to the point that the athletes know them and the club knows them. And this is Manchester United inviting these fan channels. I mean, if there's any Arsenal or Man United fans in this chat right now, I'm sure everybody knows about Arsenal Fan TV. You see the reaction it garners. The players watch it. They know what's going on. I have done a lot of contributions for Man United. Have a couple of fan channels. They used to have the United Stand. The number one that they do is Stretford Paddock. And all of the guys from Stretford Paddock, they travel now. They travel and they're sitting in the same press box that I'm sitting in. They're sitting and they're being able to ask Eric Ten Hag the same questions I would ask Eric Ten Hag. And it's mind-blowing to see that. But that's what I was saying. You don't necessarily need a degree. By all means, get one, because I feel like that's always the best way to get your foot in the door, depending on what kind of journalism you want to start out and doing. I will tell you, if you want to start out at an ESPN, the number one thing they will ask you for is your CV, which shows at least your educational history and or work experience. But look, if you're starting a fan channel, there's fan channels that are, like I said, going to the same games I'm accredited to. They're going pitch side to interview Ten Hag. I'm doing the same thing. They're going through the mix zone and stopping players and getting quotes that we even on ESPN quote their interviews. So the landscape has changed so much, and it's a good thing, I would say, even though a lot of journalists, more the old-fashioned ones, don't like it, because again, they say, well, oh God, I worked so hard and blah, blah, blah. And now this guy just put up one YouTube channel and all of a sudden. But it's a good thing, because I feel like it opens the landscape, and that's what we need. We need more voices. We need more people. The beautiful thing about these fan channels like Stretford Paddock and Arsenal Fan TV is that they're able to say things that journalists are a bit more reserved to say, because we, for example, are representing a company. I represent ESPN and Disney. I'm not just going to go out and say whatever crosses my mind. You have to think about what you want to say and how you're going to say it and present it in a certain way. Whereas when you're on these channels, and if it's your channel, power to you, you could say exactly what you want, and people get famous and popular off of that as well. So it's the same thing. If you're a freelancer, or you just work independently, then, which is now a lot of people choose to do that because they feel like they have a more freedom of speech, then that's fine. But you can make the decision to either be on one side or the other. But the point is, there's one table and now both sides are eating at that table. So the landscape has expanded so much, and there's so much more room now for people from all walks of life and all educational routes to become a sports journalist.
That's great to hear. We have a couple of questions coming in. So I'm just going to, well, we've officially started our Q&A section. So I have another question, which I think we kind of touched on. What key steps, maybe you can give us 3, would you recommend for an aspiring journalist who wants to build a strong foundation in sports journalism, particularly in terms of gaining experience and establishing credibility in the industry? I don't know if it would be from your roots or you have any other pointers where you see people coming up in the industry now that you think is beneficial to us here.
Well, like I said, honestly, the fact that the best way for a sports journalist, or for any journalist, and honestly for almost anybody that has a career, your reputation is your number one thing. And I think that the earliest that you can start building that is the best. And the only way to do that is to get your work out there. Now, before, you used to have to be employed by a certain newspaper, a certain radio station, a certain television station for people to see your work. Now, because of the internet, as I just mentioned, that's just changed that landscape. You can independently start putting your stuff out there, whether it's Instagram, whether it's a blog, whether it's YouTube. You could start putting your stuff out there. And once you keep it ethically correct, like I said, it's fact checked, you are expressing your opinions in a proper journalistic way. And I say this because my biggest gripe with the fan channels that I just mentioned is, for example, they can come on and they can say, yo, Eric Ten Hag is an idiot, him don't know what him doing. That is too personal. You don't know this man. How do you know he's an idiot? Are you fact checking it? Can you scientifically diagnose? Can you medically diagnose that he's an idiot? That is not how you should express yourself or your opinion at all. If you want to, if your goal is to just have your fan channel or your fan blog or your fan paper or your opinions on Instagram, etc., and only choose to interact with fans, then that's fine. But if you're one day hoping to sit down in front of an Eric Ten Hag and have a proper sit-down interview, or a Mikel Arteta, or, you know, anybody, a Gianni Infantino as well, if you're one day hoping to do that, then don't get too personal. That's what I was saying. You can criticize without being personal. You can say, you know what, the 11 for me that he put out didn't really work, and it made me question tactically if he knows what he's doing. But you can't go out there and be like, man, an idiot. So again, you choose what you want to do. A journalist, I'll say straight up, will never do that. You don't insert your opinions that way. However, if you want to be, this new kind of sports, I won't even call it journalism, I'll call it sports media, has allowed for these fan channels that still have sometimes even more subscribers than, say, an ESPN would have, or CVM would have, or TVJ, because they attract a certain audience. So I think once you go out there and you know exactly what your target audience is and what your ultimate goal is, then you put out your work in a certain way, and then that helps to build your reputation.
All right, thank you. We'll have a couple more questions in a few minutes. I think we can get through them. You touched on Azari Zone. You talked about educational routes. I wanted to find out from you personally, are there any, yes, you did the degree. Is there any other skills or any other courses or anything that you did along the way that you think really helped your career? Any kind of training or anything like that that you think would be good?
For example, for me in TV, the best thing that I did learn at Carimac was in terms of the basics. Like, it was in the second year, I loved the fact that I was able to, they have you work on both sides of the camera. So in front of the camera, and we learn how you express yourself, how to speak, how you speak on TV different from how you would write something, or even on radio. Radio, you're a bit more descriptive, because radio, you're trying to paint the image for people listening in the car. In TV, it's all visual. So you don't have to say, and here we have Erling Haaland scoring a goal in the 45th minute. Viewers are not stupid. They can see Erling Haaland scoring a goal in the 45th minute. That's the point of a television. So you learn those different skills, which is something I loved at Carimac. Plus, you learn the behind the scenes as well, in terms of how to set up a camera, how to shoot, how to rip that camera off and put it on, you know, whatever editing software you're using, and then edit. And trust me, I used to sit in the lab for 8 hours editing. And then you learn to burn it to a DVD. I don't even know if people burning to DVDs anymore. But back in
What's a DVD? I don't know what that is.
What's a DVD? You have to burn to a DVD. And then you learn graphic designing as well, because graphic designing is very much a part of television too. And those skills, I thought, were the best that I learned there. But then I think nothing will compare to real world skills. I will tell you that. Even if your degree is not in media and communication, if you just internship as a PA, do an internship as a PA, which is a production assistant. I have 3 guys who are working with us at ESPN here in London that all were interns and literally were working with me they were helping me carry my bag at the game, and they were helping to mic me up. And now they have full-time jobs at ESPN. And they're actual like editors and coming out to the games with us and setting up the camera and the lights. But I say nothing compares to real world experience. So even if you can do a month of what you want to do, or whatever aspect of sports journalism you want to do, that goes a long run, because it's such a hectic atmosphere that somebody, if you just walk in and you say, look, but I have a degree and I got first class honors, half of the camera guys or the director or the producer will be like, I don't care. Can you set up this light? And if you can set up that light perfectly, where there's no shadow cast on my face, they would be like, done, job tomorrow. And there's the door. So I think if you can just get real world experience anyway, anyhow, that is the most invaluable thing.
All right, 2 more questions. First one from Alika. How do you balance positive and negative feedback on your project, particularly being a woman in the industry, from the public?
Well, honestly, man, that is still a battle that we all battle with, I think. I think the number one thing is you should know yourself, and you know who to take criticism from. I think that's the best thing. My main producer, who's my boss at ESPN, I always say he is probably the best boss I've ever had, because his criticism is always constructive. But when it comes from the public, I mean, let's be honest, the Twitter comments, YouTube comments, any comments coming from the wider world, it is truly like the bowels of society, respectfully. But it is. And honestly, we're all human, so they get to you. I won't lie if I tell you that sometimes they get to me. I won't lie if somebody came on and says, I'd never really liked what you said about Man United today. I thought it was stupid. And I sometimes will go back to this day and age, me having worked in this for 14, 15 years now overall. And I go, should I have said that about United? And I have to stop myself and think, who am I to let Bob typing from his mother's basement in Nebraska make me question if I deserve to be here or not? And look, that comes with time. But you also choose when you do your work and you have built your reputation the right way, and you build up your own confidence and you do your own work on yourself, it honestly becomes easier. You choose who to listen to. And I think that's with any criticism in life. You choose who to let disturb your peace and who not to. And I think it took some years. It took time. It still sometimes is a battle here and there, because it's not always a silly comment. Those are the ones that are easy to ignore. Sometimes people have a point. As I told you, sometimes I'm like, maybe I shouldn't have said that about Man United. And then sometimes I'll ask my co-host and I'll be like, did you think that opinion I gave was too much? But it's normal. And you know what? When you choose which criticism to take and you choose to take the constructive ones, at least it helps you do a deeper dive in yourself and your job. And then maybe that made me research something more on Man United stats. And then I learned from it more. So the number one thing is don't take things personally. Once you build yourself up, once you build your reputation, once you have confidence within yourself, then you honestly are in such a better place.
Thanks. Last question from Azari again. In COVID-19, with little or no sports happening, how difficult was it for you to keep producing high quality content?
Oh my days. COVID was wild. But you know what? COVID was actually career-wise one of the best times for me, because remember how I said the biggest, I guess, challenge for any sports journalist is access to your sources. You always want to be correct and factually correct. So you always want to go straight to the horse's mouth to get a comment, to back up a rumor. But oftentimes that horse is Cristiano Ronaldo, and how am I going to get to him, But the beautiful thing about COVID is everything stopped, that athletes were more open to doing interviews. And we did all our interviews like this virtually. I remember when it started coming out about COVID and lockdown here, our office manager came and said, we're going to drop off a camera set by you. And I said, I beg your pardon?
At my house?
And then they said, oh, you're going to have to set it up. You're going to have to do this. I had to set myself up, my camera up on the tripod. I had to relearn to light myself, light my living room. I had to learn to mic myself. Like even right here, this little thing right here is a 4K camera that costs about £2,000. And then this is the mics that they send over as well, that I had to learn to mic myself up. And then the software that comes with it, it took a while. It was very daunting. I have extra respect for everybody now who works behind the camera, because your audio technicians, your directors, down to your makeup artists, it takes a village, and teamwork really does make that dream work. But it was a time that I learned so much as well. And now I can set up my own camera. still, even when I go out, I can self-record, which has come in handy so many times as well. And that time too, in terms of the access to the players, like I said, they all wanted to talk. And it was nice to sit down and have these conversations. Usually when you request interviews, they give you around 10 to 15 minutes maximum, because in television, let's be honest, you're putting out maybe a soundbite or two, or maybe a maximum 5 to 8 minutes of an interview.
Right.
But sometimes that takes 20 minutes because you do edit things down. And I remember I had an exclusive with Robert Lewandowski, and he came on, and it was supposed to be for 15 minutes. And the 15-minute mark on Zoom, the guy said, okay, 15 minutes. He was at Bayern Munich still at the time before he went to Barcelona. And Robert said, no, this is actually fun. He's like, I haven't spoken to anyone but my wife and children in like 4 weeks. So he's like, let's carry on. And we ended up talking for an hour. Wow. And to this day, it was one of the best interviews I did, because it was a massive year for Lewandowski where he should have won the Ballon d'Or, did not win it because they canceled it because of COVID. We talked about that. It would have been the first time that Messi or Ronaldo hadn't won it in so long. So it was a difficult time, but we actually were able to produce a lot of meaningful and high quality pieces that still stand today.
Wow, that's great. Thanks for sharing that, Alexis. We are technically at the end. I know there's one more. Alika, you had the last question. It said, and we'll probably touch on it a little bit. How do you stay objective in reporting, especially when covering controversial issues in sports? If you could kind of quickly, give us some tips there, Alexis.
Honestly, like I said, you just have to learn to swallow your opinion and just report on the facts. Say the facts first, but you can learn to say the facts in a certain way that gives people an idea of where you stand. And look, there are certain issues, especially controversial issues in sports, where I think it's encouraged nowadays for you to say what you think. For example, with all of the misogyny that goes on in sports, with all of the homophobic stuff that goes on in sports, with all of the racism that we still see in football, I think everyone knows what side they would rather see you on. And you're still able to express your opinion in a just way. And the number one thing I would say is have your facts. Have your facts 100% times, because once you have your facts, nobody else can come at you. And you know what? Oftentimes, if you have a certain opinion or a right opinion, they are brought up it comes up because you've done your research. And that's what I was saying. Don't just go out there and willy-nilly say an opinion and say, I don't really agree with this. Because once they ask you why, best believe you have to come with your research and your facts to support it. Not just necessarily. And I feel like once you have done research, even if you already have your opinion, if you research it more by looking at the opinions against your opinion, you learn more of how you can formulate your opinion and express it best.
Thank you so much, Alexis. We're at the end of our session, our very first session. I had an amazing time. I really enjoyed speaking to you again. And I want to thank everyone for joining us, everybody that was here and participating. I see Azari is also asking more questions, but guys, we'll have to wrap up.
That is a good question, though. I will
go ahead.
I will quickly answer it and say, if you can learn another language, I 100% recommend it, especially if it's Spanish. Half my family is from El Salvador, so I grew up speaking Spanish. And I find that has helped me so much, especially in football here, because, for example, Vinicius Jr. does not speak English. He speaks Portuguese and he speaks kind of Spanish, but he speaks Portuñol. And because I speak Spanish, they have given me so many interviews with him when nobody else will get him, because they're like, he feels more comfortable speaking in something close to his native tongue. And the truth is, a lot of the best footballers in the world right now often are not English speakers. Brazilians always are good in football. Spain, they are world champions, men, and Europe champions now, and women as well, as who are the world champions. So Spanish, if you can, it always helps to learn another language. French too. We have a colleague who is French and speaks French, and he's currently on his way to Paris now to interview Paul Pogba, because for those who know the issues with Paul Pogba right now, he can speak English, but he feels more comfortable talking about controversial things in his native language, which is French. And that's why my colleague who speaks French got the nod. I would love to interview Paul Pogba, but these things help so much. So if you can, even to just conduct an interview, even to just ask 5 questions, because oftentimes you just get 5 questions, trust me, it helps you so much.
I mean, I look at it even in the region. I mean, we are in a Spanish-speaking, we're in Latin America. So, I mean, today Jamaica is playing Honduras. I believe they're Spanish-speaking country. If you wanted to ever have a chance of, like, you know, engaging with the other team, Spanish as a language is going to go bring you very far in this region.
That actually reminds me, too, of because when I was working at Sportsmax and the Reggae Boys had a match against Mexico, and I was down at National Stadium, and obviously I did all the Reggae Boys interviews, and they were the ones stopping, but none of the Mexican players stopped. And this was a big Mexico team because they wanted to speak in Spanish. And I remember I spoke to one of them in Spanish, and I asked, because Chicharito Javier Hernandez was playing for Mexico at the time, and he was at Man United at the time too. And he stopped and spoke to me in Spanish, and everybody could not believe that the one interview Chicharito did for that entire international break was this one random girl in Jamaica, me. But it was because I was the only one that spoke literally in Spanish, and that helped so much. So literally, I would say Spanish, French. I mean, if you can, or even German, if it depends on where you want to go, depends on what you want to cover, literally. But if you could just learn even the basics of 5 questions of what were your thoughts on that game. You don't even have to specify the game, but, you know, are you happy with this? What did you feel about that decision? Simple things like that. Trust me, you will see it helps you in the long run, because at the end of the day, as I told you, a lot of athletes are very guarded, very reserved. The easiest thing they would tell you is be like, no speak English, and walk away.
Yeah.
And you can't blame them, because they want to feel comfortable in their native language. So if you can come back to them and say, oh, it's okay, I can speak a little bit of German, they will, 9 out of 10 times, I promise you, they will stop then if you can't.
Wow, thanks for that again, Alexis. Okay, we're not the end, and there's some housekeeping that I think we need to do. But Alexis, again, huge privilege. I thought you were the perfect person to kind of kick off this series at the introduction to sports journalism. I have learned so much. You know, I'm not the target audience, but and again, it was exciting talking to you and everybody else that joined. Excellent questions. And remember, our next session is coming up. It is gonna be October 28th. We're gonna be interviewing Mariah Ramharak. She's a Sportsmax journalist, anchor for Sports Zone, and she'll be talking about doing research. So what kind of tools we can have at our disposal when we want to research and learn about either sport or an athlete before we go and cover them. Before that, we're also going to be publishing, and I want you guys to respond as well, because we've introduced Smart Term as the platform for us to really engage on. Alexis, I invited her to also respond to any questions you guys might have on Smart Term, or share anything that she thinks will be valuable in terms of a resource. But once you sign on, you will see the entire course, all the dates. We're going to be updating with the links, and of course our challenges. So we want everyone to go on. The challenge is going to be posted between today and tomorrow, within the next 48 hours, I will say, and you will have about 3 weeks to complete the challenge. 2 weeks, sorry, 2 weeks, yes, 28. 2 weeks to complete a challenge and get points, and then we'll move from there. But guys, thank you so much. We are going to post this online as well. So and at the moment, you know, if you know anyone else that still wants to be a part of the program, they can still register. So let everybody know. Finally, I saw a question about shirts. There is a plan to provide shirts. We do not have the shirts as yet. There was an issue in terms of the supply that we wanted to use. We thought they had the best quality, but they will not be able to provide the shirts at this time. So we're looking at alternatives. We know it seems very important, or at least it's very convenient if you're somewhere and you have an official shirt, but I would suggest turning up the charm a little bit. But I mean, I do this for ISSA as well. So just explain to them, you know, if they can give you a little leeway. Show them your pages, show them the program on Instagram, tell them you're working on this program and you just want to exactly what you want to do. You want to get an interview with about this or cover with this person if it's possible, and a smile always. Nothing breaks down barriers like a good smile and proper manners.
Very true. Very true.
That's where we're at right now. So Smart Term is where we can have the conversation, keep it going, keep in touch on WhatsApp or email. We try to be as responsive as possible. And again, Alexis, the greatest, thank you so much.
Thank you guys. Those are some really good questions, man. I felt like I was being grilled like Miss Jamaica or something.
Listen to me. All I do is listen to podcasts, you know, so I know how to do.
I know, exactly.
Anyways, guys.
Thank you guys for having me. And of course, I mean, happily, I'm on Instagram. Andrew, I'm sure we'll share my Instagram too. And happy to answer any other questions too in the future. So definitely hit me up.
I'll share your Instagram right now in the chat. All right, guys. We know everybody's busy, so if you have to leave, please feel free to go. I mean, I'm leaving as well, so we'll talk later. Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for joining.